Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back. Today I have a particularly empowering message that I believe every single human being walking the face of the planet can benefit from if they take it on board and if it resonates. I'd love, as per usual, I want to hear from you guys. So definitely drop me some comments. Let me know where in the world you are tuning in from, and definitely play along at home. And I'd love to hear from you a little bit about, what is your relationship dynamic with your parents? So that's what I want to look at with each and every one of you guys today, because in my own life and in the work that I do with clients, this is kind of the starting block. It's really what I've come to believe to be the foundational piece if we want to have really, directing the course of our own lives, like living our own lives, and also, utilizing the knowledge of our relationship dynamics, particularly with our parents, and how they can, seep into the relationships, all other relationships that we experience in our life, particularly our intimate partnership, but you're going to see this in the dynamics with literally everything, like from your work, from your career, from your relationship with your boss or your employees, your relationships with friends, other family members. It's all intertwined. So get ready, and I want you to be thinking about basically what your relationship is with your parents as an adult now. All right, so that's what we're going to be diving into. So very excited for this one, and like I said, please play along at home, and if you do find value in today's message, I would absolutely love for you to please do share it with anybody else that you know could benefit from it, whether privately or publicly, however you want to do it. I love getting into the minds and the hearts of other exceptional souls just like you guys, so very excited about this one. So let's dive in. So today's topic is that most adults, and I'm not trying to be negative in this message, by the way, every single message that I am sharing with you guys is for the hope of empowering you, all right? Not to judge ourselves, not to, get negative and focus on the bad, but actually go, let's take responsibility, let's address, and let's see things as they are so that we can then paint a picture as to what we actually want and then close the gap, all right? So it sounds a little negative, this heading. That's why I point that out. But I'm saying that most adults haven't transitioned their parent relationships from child and adult to adult and adult because of these three things that I'm going to talk to you about today. And the three things that I'm going to mention to you guys are really the pathway to making sure that you do transition as an adult from playing the child, particularly in the parent relationships, transition that into an adult, at least in your relatability, even if your parents are no longer with us, even if they are estranged from you. This is going to be very, very empowering, because at the end of the day, it's actually more about how you shift, how you relate to others versus having to get them on board and and then feeling hopeless because you can't control other people, right? So, and I want to actually paint a picture as to what happened for me just yesterday in my own empowerment with a family relationship. And how that can relate to what we're talking about today. All right, so like I said, play along at home, and I'll get into the comments as soon as I finish explaining this for you guys, and I can't wait to connect. All right, so the reason why I feel like it's really, really important for us to look at our relationship with our parental figures, or anybody who was a massive influence, an adult that you looked up to, that you molded yourself around potentially, or you tried to live to the expectations of, or maybe you craved their love the most, whoever they were. But for most people, the most impactful adults in our lives are our parental figures. But there could be grandparents, it could be siblings, it could be a number of other different adults, but just pick who that is for you. All right. And so the reason why we want to look at this is because it's come to my awareness and see if this resonates with you and your own experience as well, that until you've actually transitioned your relationships with your parents into that adult kind of reciprocal dynamic, you'll continue to play out the child-adult dynamic in all of those other relationships that I mentioned, okay? And basically, what does that look like? So an adult-adult relationship, like I just mentioned, is reciprocal, right? It's honoring the individuals. It's a level of acceptance. It's a level of treating the other person like they're the number one person directing the course of their lives. There's a lot of respect. There's all your values, right, being upheld. There's, quality connection that is equal, right, between the parties involved, okay? And if we compare and contrast that to a child-adult relationship, basically that's where one party, the adult, is the one taking full responsibility and directing that relationship. Whereas the child tends to be more of a follower, more of the living to the expectations, more of the trying to get the validation, more of the victim role, all right? And they're not taking the responsibility. Now, the child-adult relationship is obviously good, right? Like when you're a child and you're an adult, but as we grow and evolve and we actually become the adults in our own lives, we have to also transition that relationship. But why most of us don't is because it requires the person playing the role of the child to actually step up and take responsibility for their life, their pathway in their life, what they're choosing to do with their lives. Also, taking responsibility for their own state of being emotionally, their own fulfillment, even reconciling the past experiences. And basically I'm going to outline the 3 actual things that you can work on and why most of us haven't actually transitioned this relationship. But first, I want to talk a bit about a story. So in my own life, I've been mentioning over the last few weeks or the last few videos about a particularly challenging dynamic that I have had in one of my relationships. And this has been a family relationship with somebody I've known all my life, not a parental relationship. I've done a lot of work with my relationships with my parents, which I'm very, very proud of. But there was this other person in my life who I wasn't fully aware. I'd kind of deceived myself as to the quality of the dynamic. And more recently, kind of my rose-colored glasses were taken off and I had to look at this relationship in a whole new light. And it was really uncomfortable. I went through stages of feeling really hurt, and just very disappointed, and basically all the things that I needed to be in order to transition from being a child that blindly follows into the adolescence who rebels against and goes, hang on, this ain't working, to eventually get to the adult position of being centered within yourself with the 3 things that I'm going to mention to you in a moment, and also taking that responsibility and having that willingness to actually become the adult and shift the dynamic. Now, interestingly enough, I'm actually, because of what I'm going through and the value that I'm getting from the work that I'm doing personally on myself, I'm about to create a free 3-part training series for you guys on how to transform conflict into connection. So it's really, really big on my heart right now because of my own personal experience with this and the success that I'm having with it. And basically what happened for me just yesterday was with this particular person, I've been doing a lot of the internal work, a lot of the transitioning from the child to the adult in this relationship. And basically I went and visited this person yesterday with full intention to have one of the most challenging conversations I felt like I was going to have in my life. Very honest, very raw, very loving, but very direct. And I prepped myself for this over the last couple of weeks, right? And basically what happened in that dynamic was when I actually connected with this person, they had actually made some major shifts with their treatment of me. And it was very interesting to me to have the firsthand experience as to what it is when you shift your own energy, when you shift out of the child into the adult, and the grand influence it can have on the people around you without you even having to be as direct as you might have once perceived you'd have to be, right? There has to be that willingness, which is part of what I'm going to outline with you guys now. But basically, long story short, I didn't actually need to have the very direct conversation that I had prepared myself for, and I can equate that to the shifts that I made within myself, because energetically we're always impacting and affecting people in our circle, right? Whoever we're interacting with, it's a very unconscious process, but when we act weak and childlike, we end up having people around us kind of stand over us or treat us like they're the adult and tell us what to do, right? And vice versa. And, so if you're concerned about the treatment that you're receiving from those around you, the best thing that you can do is take ownership over how you're showing up, right? And this is what we all do as human beings, right? We're trying to balance everything all the time. So if you show up and you're full of yourself, right? Or the concept that we have here in Australia is tall poppy syndrome, right? When somebody is trying to stand out too much, kind of have too much of an ego, other people automatically want to chop that poppy down, right? And the same thing happens when we tend to be very depressed or depleted. We attract people into our existence, or the energy of those other people shifts to try and balance out that very low energy. And we want to build those people up and tell them, hey, it's going to be okay. And believe in yourself, or whatever we're going to do. And the same is true in terms of the treatment that we're receiving. And particularly if you feel like you're still being treated as a child, you got to look at, how is it that I'm being the child and I could step up to becoming the adult in my own existence. All right. And from my perspective and my experience, most adults aren't even questioning this and aren't even realizing that they are still playing the child-adult dynamic in their parental relationships. They're still expecting their parents to be something that they're not. They're still blaming them for, past imperfect human actions or inactions, all these sorts of things, and even reverting to the child in their presence, right? That's why a lot of us can get very overwhelmed or anxious about spending time with our families. Maybe we only see them at Christmas time or something. And we tend to feel like we don't like how we act and behave or feel when we're around those parents or whoever those people are that we haven't shifted the dynamic into adulthood with. And basically, we just want to avoid, rather than take responsibility for owning what's actually happening, what we're experiencing, and how to go about changing it. And let's get into it. So the three basic things that prevent us as adults shifting our parental dynamics from the child-adult to adult-adult fulfilling dynamics are basically these things. And this is what's going wrong, plus what to do about it, okay? To empower your own self, because we want to make sure that we go to the heart of the relationships that have impacted us the most. Because when we go to the linchpin of relationships and we shift the dynamics there, it's kind of like the domino effect in all other relationships. That's why I like to go, who's the strongest, right? The longer we've had those relationship dynamics in our lives, usually the more impactful they've been. So why not go to the heart of that and shift that and see what the repercussions are in terms of the domino effect, in terms of, that healthy transition in all other relationships. And if you're somebody who does kind of feel like in your intimate partnerships, you kind of navigate between feeling like the child or becoming the mother or becoming the father with your partner's the child, or vice versa, whatever's happening, a lot of the time it's because of the unhealed relationships and the lack of transitioning into adulthood in those parental relationships. So we still continue to play out those patterns. Same thing happens, say we play that out with a boss and we feel victimized or whatever it is, but you can look at that in your own life. So, number one, in order to transition, the reason why adults haven't transitioned from child to adult is oftentimes because they haven't yet taken personal responsibility for their own pathway in life, and they're holding on to these expectations of their parent, the imperfect human being that their parents have been, in terms of the decisions that they might have made, maybe the experiences that they may have had in childhood. And basically they're so caught up in that story that they can't transition into an adult, right? They're still playing the victim. Now, I'm not suggesting that, I know that a lot of us have experienced very traumatic experiences, and there are definitely therapeutic approaches that must occur in order for us to heal those wounds and then shift to the adult dynamic. So I'm not trying to get us there prematurely, but I just want to nail it down as a general rule that basically the number one reason why people haven't transitioned to the adult relationships with their parents is because they're not taking personal responsibility, and they're still maybe trying to live to the expectations of those parents. Maybe they're still attached to getting validation or acceptance or approval, and so they're trying to mold themselves because they're, again, not taking responsibility. And basically, the way to go about it, if you find yourself in that child-adult relationship with your parents, even though you're an adult, is number one, you got to own how could I be taking more personal responsibility, 100% responsibility for my own life as an adult. That means I'm no longer living to the expectations of others. I'm going to live in alignment with my values. It also means that I'm not going to expect others to live in my expectations of how they should be. I'm going to accept them as the imperfect human beings directing the course of their own lives in their own way that they are. And you've got to also go and say to yourself, I'm going to detach from this neediness around external validation, and I'm going to validate myself based on what is most meaningful to me and aligning fully with that. I'm taking responsibility for my own validation, all right? So that's the first thing that stops people from that transition, is not taking personal responsibility. Tick it out, take some personal responsibility, do the work, right? Number two is that they haven't established a self-loving, self-honoring relationship with themselves that ultimately is there to set a new standard for the quality of connection and treatment that we have in those adult relationships. And so basically, what people have to do, or what we have to do in order to become the adult, is we have to do the work to create that self-love, that self-honoring, and setting a standard based on our own treatment of self for all other connections in our lives, and particularly the adult relationship that we want to create with our parents. And so we have to take a stand for what's right. And that's if we want people to treat us differently. If we don't want to be treated like a child, we need to become the adult. And that means validating ourselves, honoring ourselves, loving ourselves, respecting ourselves, and holding a high standard for the quality of connection. All right. And at the end of the day, the best way to influence others to change is to change yourself, right? Like I shared in that story about, shifting my own relationship and how I relate to this other person in my life automatically impacted them and our dynamic without me even having to have the direct conversation that I was expecting to have. And albeit that if down the track I find that past behavior that I no longer stand for coming back into the dynamic, I'm already prepared to have the right conversation. So that's really important that you're doing the work. And lastly, the third reason why people don't transition their parental relationships from child-adult to adult-adult is because they're just not willing to navigate the inevitable conflict and disconnection that's going to occur when you shift the path that you're on, when you are, transforming into a new quality of connection that you want to establish. So at the end of the day, willingness is key. For any relational transformation, you have to be willing to lose what is not right, and even all of it, for the sake of creating and having the opportunity for creating what is ultimately fulfilling. All right. So, and there's also a willingness to be reciprocal in that relationship, which most people aren't willing to do. They still play the child. They still don't even really show care or consideration to their parental figure. It's always about them and what's going on in their lives, and also the blame game and the victimhood that comes with all of those dynamics not shifting, all right, and you're not taking that responsibility. So my hope is that today's message has just got you thinking about, what is my relationship with my parents or other influential people in your life, particularly if you feel smaller than, or you feel really resentful of. Basically, that can highlight a lot of times the child dynamic still at play, and asking yourself, how do I take more responsibility of my life? How do I establish a deeper, self-loving, self-honoring relationship that sets a new standard of all other relationships in my life? And also, how can I get myself to courageously be willing to navigate through any of the disconnection or conflict necessary to shift the dynamic and transform and establish a new quality of connection with the people that I care about and I want a future with. All right. So this is very empowering if you take it on board. I really would love to hear from those of you who are courageous and bold enough and willing to do the work to shift and transform these dynamics. You're going to see a beautiful result in all other relationships when you start becoming the person who is self-empowered, who is taking 100% responsibility for their own life and fulfillment, and is definitely having that high quality of self-love and self-honoring relationship that sets a standard for all other relationships, a willingness to go through conflict and disconnection to establish good quality connections, and a willingness to be reciprocal in those relationships so that you can have adult dynamics. All right. So hope this message has served you. Definitely want to check in with you guys. So if you are tuning in, please do drop me a comment. Let me know where in the world you're tuning in from. If you've got any questions or comments or words of wisdom, I'd love to hear from you guys. So let me say hi. I have got Playful in the house. Hello to you, and Cindy and Sophia. Hello, Sophia. And Mark and Judy and Bree and Henry, awesome to see you guys. And Carlos, good to see you, my friend. The mind of a relationship is like a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it gets and the more it can expand. So well put, my friend. Absolutely beautiful and completely resonate with that. Very empowering thought, and much love coming your way. All right, so that's my message for you guys. I want to thank you guys for joining me live. Those of you who could make it today, if I can speak properly. And also anybody watching the recording, drop your questions, drop your comments. Can't wait to connect with you guys. And like I said, I'm really hopeful that today's message has served you, empowered you, and definitely got you in a more empowered mindset with a pathway forward to shift the dynamics in all relationships in your life, so that you're ultimately having really fulfilling relationships between adults and you don't have to fall victim, all right, to becoming the child and playing the victim. All right. And my message, just to send you guys off with, as always, is to go out there and honor your authenticity, deepen your intimate connections, and definitely go contribute your unique gifts meaningfully and purposefully. All right. So much love for each and every one of you guys, and I will see you very, very soon.